I'm Alex Dale. Cisgender, transgender, gender fluid, agender, non-binary. Of these words I just listed, do you recognize any of them? Don't worry if you don't, there's no pop quiz. Now, currently, there's about 327.2 million people living in the United States. Of that, 0.6% of adults identify as some form of transgender. That doesn't seem like much, but that sliver of a percent equates to about 1.4 million people, according to the Williams Institute in a study they did in 2016. Now, in order to understand the gender spectrum, you'll first need to know the difference between sex and gender, what it actually means to be transgender, along with understanding the binary and the non-binary category. So, let's begin. Sex and gender. It's not the same thing despite what some people believe. Sex is a binary category. It's basically referring to two different things, male and female. It's a physical thing rather than a mental. Now, Lexicon Dictionary refers to it as either one of the two main categories of which humans and other living beings are divided into based on their reproductive functions. Now, gender, on the other hand, is mental. There's no physical aspect of it. And Lexicon Dictionary defines it as the state of being male or female as expressed by social or cultural differences rather than biological. Now, there's two main categories of gender, cisgender and transgender. Now, think to yourself, if your gender correlates with the sex you were assigned with at birth, congratulations, you're cisgender. You were doing something and you probably didn't even realize it. Now, transgender, on the other hand, to begin with, it's an overreaching umbrella term, as stated by transstudents.org. Basically, it's anything that is not cisgender. It's anything different. Now, how do you know if you're transgender? There's two typical ways, gender dysphoria and gender euphoria. Dysphoria, as defined by the American Psychiatric Association, refers to the confliction between a person's physical or assigned gender and the one they identify with. Now, it's usually a negative feeling, being chosen to identify as a male, but being referred to as ma'am and miss, and likewise for the opposite. Now, gender euphoria is the opposite of that. It's a joyful feeling, and it's when someone refers to you as the identity you identify as. Identifying as a female, being referred to as miss and ma'am, and using the right pronouns. Now, as we continue, it's important to remember that transgender is an umbrella term, and in that umbrella, there's two more. So many. So, there's the binary and the non-binary aspect. In the binary, it's where you'll find trans men and trans women. This is where they hang out. Now, a trans man is a person who was born female, but they identify as male. And likewise for trans women. They were assigned and born as male, but they identify as female. Now, that corresponds to the gender, or to the sex binary, just in reverse. Non-binary, however, is different. It's where everyone else who doesn't fall into any binary category lives. So, in Western cultures, they have genders such as gender fluid and agender, whereas others, such as the indigenous Native Americans, have things they use to refer to, such as two-spirit, among others, which refers to a third gender. Now, what does agender mean? It's pretty simple. Let's break down the word. The prefix a means lacking or without. Combined it with gender, and it's lacking or without gender. Fairly simple. This also can be referred to as non-binary or genderqueer. These words are all able to be used interchangeably, but some people prefer the different labels. There's nothing wrong with that. So let's talk about another word I mentioned earlier, gender fluid. This is where you flow between the spectrum. At any given time, you can identify as male or female, both, or neither. It's just the tip of the iceberg for this spectrum, but it's unfortunately all we'll have time for. I do encourage you to go look for more research and understand them after this is over. So let's recap. Gender isn't a binary thing. It's a spectrum. There's no neat little boxes that they can fit into. It's all just points along a line. Now, hopefully you understand a little bit more about the difference between sex and gender. Being transgender in general, you'll understand more about the non-binary and binary aspect. I mean, there is 1.4 million of us. At some point, you'll run into them. Today is a good example. Thank you.